How's everybody doing today? This is a robot here from scooterwest.com. Today I'm going to show you how to do a valve adjustment on your 3-valve Vespa or Piaggio motor. This is the newest 150 or 125 motor found on the Vespa Primavera, the Vespa Sprint, the Fly 150, and also the 946. There's also some other models in Europe. I don't know what they are, but there's other stuff that uses this motor too. So pretty simple job to do on this motor. You need a couple tools. You're gonna need some sort of 8mm wrench. You're gonna need a screwdriver with a little T25 Torx to remove the little spark plug access door. You're gonna need a 5/8 spark plug wrench. And to make the job much easier, you could use these little valve adjustment doohickey tools, whatever you want to call them. You know, and the one you'll need is actually going to be 8mm. It's going to have the small square drive in there. And if you want to improvise with a regular wrench, you can use like a little 8mm combination wrench and a needle nose to turn the little square thing. But you know, doing this job day in, day out, and see these tools have been used quite a bit. This is what the techs here use. Makes the job much quicker. Then you'll need a set of feeler gauges. These are specific ones for small engines. Intakes are going to be 4/1000ths of an inch or 1/10 of a millimeter. The exhaust is going to be 6/1000ths or 1/1500ths of a millimeter, 0.15. And those are the ones you'll need.
What about the socket to turn the motor over?
Turn the motor over, gonna need a 19mm socket, and that's about it. And some grease. Also recommend that you get the O-ring, have the O-ring on hand. Even a good idea for the first service, you know, the actual valve cover O-ring. A spark plug if you want to replace that.
All right, let's show all the fans at home how it's done.
Sounds good. So pretty much do a valve adjustment on this motor. Of course, it's going to be super duper simple with the motor out and nice I could show everybody, but you could do this whole job all through the access door. The techs that do this more frequently, me, Nick, and Luis, they like to actually take the bike off the center stand and have the front clamp, and that allows the motor to pivot down a little bit. The few scooters I've done valve adjustments on, or the 3-valve ones, I tend to loosen this rear shock. And for a home user, it may be a good idea to loosen the rear shock and put some sort of you know, stand underneath. And the whole idea is if you have the shock loose, you can adjust the stand to kind of adjust the position of this valve cover to gain access to all 3 or all 4 of these.
So where would you put that stand? Would you put that stand underneath the chassis or underneath the swing arm portion of the motor?
Right under the middle of the, you know, kind of the chassis, right in the center.
So what he's saying is we'll use this frame. This is, by the way, the new frame. You can see Robot obviously kind of ripped apart the old frame and has already started pulling in all the wiring and stuff like that. We'll have him come talk about that later. But he was talking about where that jack stand goes. The Vespa frames, all of them have this nice, relatively flat spot underneath here. And that's what he's saying. You can kind of lift that up and down so you can kind of gain access to the valve cover and the valve cover adjusting tappets.
So the valve cover, there's your 4 fasteners right there. Another thing you want to remove so you can turn the engine over easily from your left side and on the belt cover. You don't need to take the whole belt cover off, but there's this little cooling access door and there's 2 T25 fasteners. You pop that little cover off and you can turn that, that little 19mm nut in there to set it at the top dead center.
So this is actually the belt side of the crankshaft there?
Yeah, so we can do that. It's
connecting directly to the crankshaft so you can now turn the motor over.
So the 4 screws are out. Excuse the mess of tools. I got a lot going on here today.
This is a super impromptu video. Good opportunity to do an overview on this.
So valve cover came off. If you're doing this in the frame, you may want to cut one of these hose clamps and just replace it with a regular hose clamp. You know, our part number on those hose clamps is HCL6-mini. So you can see this O-ring still in good shape since it's new. If you're going to do this job, you know, at 12,000 miles, I would suggest replacing this O-ring, and also keep in mind there's another rubber plug that seals the weld to the spark plug hole. So now you can see the 3-valve setup. You got 2 intake valves and 1 exhaust valve on this engine. Keep in mind I have the spark plug out, so it's a lot easier to turn the motor over. But you want to turn the motor counterclockwise. And check this out on this side, Steve. Show you the arrow where it's going to be set at top to the center. I was almost already there. But that little arrow right there, and it's pointing to that pin on the cam chain, needs to line up with this little scribe right there. So that's top dead center right there. So now you can actually check the adjustment of the valves.
What's your take on those numbers that are etched in there, or stamped in the 196 and?
I think it's just a casting number. I mean, these heads are probably cast in big batches, and just some sort of number. I bet you take another one apart, has some other numbers in there.
So nothing important, maybe a date code or something like that. Who the hell knows? Okay.
Something, yeah.
Not important.
You can see that they've improved the design. Those are actually roller rockers in there. That's like a needle bearing.
Do we got a flashlight you can maybe?
Is that too much light? How's that?
No, that's probably pretty good. And then point to the rollers in there.
So you can see those like little roller guys in there.
Cool, that's good.
And another thing, I don't know if, and it's not anything, no one needs to be concerned with it, but this is actually a centrifugal weight on the end of the cam sprocket right here. And before the scooter starts, the cam sits right here, and there's a little rod that goes through here, and it actually holds the exhaust valve open longer. You know, the lower the theoretic compression of the motor until the engine starts. So once the engine starts, this comes out, so it's no longer holding the exhaust valve open a little longer, and that's the way when it's running, this is actually hanging out like that. And that allows Piaggio to use a smaller starter motor, you know, because it's lowering your engine compression just for cranking. Once it starts, that thing's winged open, and it's to the correct compression ratio, you know, for the motor, and just by holding the valves open longer.
I told everybody we were going to get pretty techie with this one, so there you go.
So, all right, let's see how the valves look after 21 miles. Got 4 thousandths or 1/10 of a millimeter. And these are like handy little feeler gauges that make it a lot easier. And I'm gonna go ahead and slip that in there. It's actually a little tight. Drags a little more than I'd like. I mean, you normally want a dragging feel, but I don't know how to describe it, but it drags a little bit more than I would normally like, so that's probably a little on the tight side. This one, that one's a little bit better. And for the exhaust, you're gonna go with a 6 thousandths or 1500ths of a millimeter, 0.15 millimeter. Again, that's a little on the tight side. And keep in mind, with this engine, Piaggio recommends that you adjust the valves the first service. And according to the 2 techs that work on these all the time, they say most of the time, yeah, they're just a little bit tight, and they go ahead and you know, adjust them. So this is a handy little you know, adjustment set. There's 8 millimeters, so it actually fits on the nut right there. And then there's actually a square socket. I mean, you can improvise with a, you know, closed-in wrench or whatever. I don't want you to have an 8 out here, but something, you know, crack that and turn it with a little needle nose. But, you know, pretty much see it kind of lines up and keys with the, break that free. I'm breaking the lock nut free, and with the lock nut free, it can kind of just go wherever. You can kind of have a feel for this. See how it stops? Right when it stops, I'm putting very little pressure on that little knob. That's right where, you know, with the correct clearance feeler gauge in there. Oops, slipped a little bit. And just go ahead and snug it. And now it's just right, it's dragging. And so this is the correct clearance, it drags just fine. This is, one side's too thick. I can't even get it in there, or it'd be very tight to get it in there. And then the size smaller goes through way too easy. So right now it's at the factory specified clearance.
So first service, and then how often after that would you say?
You could do it after that every 12,000 miles. So it goes quite a long ways.
I think he's going to repeat that with the top ones there. So that's checking and adjusting the valves on the new 3-valve motor, right?
Yeah, pretty simple. Pretty much the same, you know, just one extra valve on top of the older style motor. And once bolting this all back together, you can see there's still some of the factory grease on here. Kind of want to grease the O-ring. I'm going to be so lazy, I'm actually going to grab the grease that's there and re-grease it. Same goes with this little guy here.
It's best to seat the plug in the cast aluminum head. I guess that's the only way it would work, huh?